I'm having a chat with Roger Wright, pianist. We're talking about a recital that's coming up here on Sunday, December 3rd, so it's in a couple, 3 days from this interview, in Laguna Beach. We'll talk about details in a bit. But Roger has some just amazing credits to his name. We're going to talk about those, but let me just read a little bit. Audible Chocolate, his piano playing has been described as, and the Washington Post gave him another just a wonderful quote that he can use. Here it is: voraciously hungry mind. How I wish I have ever had anybody say that about me. So I can't wait. Everybody should be quite excited about attending this recital coming up. Roger is based in Southern California now. We're going to talk about his school coming up. But for now, let me just run down the program a little bit for this coming Sunday, December 3rd. It's in a private home, so you should probably give Alan Bursteed, who is violinist, who will be joining Roger, a call just to kind of confirm. I don't want hundreds of people to suddenly show up at this home. Roger Bursteed's telephone number in the Southern California area is 714-814-1050. It's a program that they're going to invite you to give donations to, so that's marvelous. There'll be a reception before the 7 o'clock recital at 6:30, and it should be just a marvelous evening in Laguna Beach, overlooking the twinkling lights of the city, all that good stuff. A great program: Chopin, Beethoven, Prokofiev. It's really quite a wonderful program. But let's talk about Roger's career a little bit here, please. You know, I have never seen such incredible quotes, the marvelous quotes that you have received. For example, Audible Chocolate. Now, I wish I had thought of those kind of quotes in some of my reviews. Costa Rica News declared Roger's playing Audible Chocolate. Wow. Also, the Washington Post, let me find it here. Let me see, hang on a second. Voraciously hungry mind. Now, that tells me a lot about the intellect involved in this kind of music. So we are talking about a performer who really understands the intellectual details and depths and subtexts of the music that he's playing. Alan Bursteed is going to join, violinist Alan Bursteed is going to join Roger for Beethoven the number 10 violin sonata, the last of the violin sonatas. Roger's going to play 2 Chopin pieces, the incredible third piano sonata, and then after a little break, they're going to he'll play the Tarantella, the Opus 43 of Chopin, then the Beethoven Sonata number 10, as I mentioned, and then as a little end, and I think it's incredible on many levels, but the Precipitato, the last movement of the piano sonata. Thank you. We talked about that earlier. Man, it's tough, these pronunciations. The piano sonata number 7 of Prokofiev. This is the last of his sonatas, composed in 1942, right in the thick of World War II. So some precipitato can mean headlong, but in a way it means frantic and hysterical also. If you can imagine being invaded by German troops in that very period. Anything to say?
I'm just thinking about precipitato, precipitating. I always thought of it as precipitating.
Yes, very well. And sure enough, it's a 7/8 movement in 7/8 that flies by. It's incredible. I remember it from way back when I was in junior high school, just drop dead. A wonderful finale to this lovely little house concert. Let me give you the address while I'm at it. Give everybody in Southern California the address. It's a house concert in Laguna Beach, as I mentioned. The address is 1565 Tahiti Avenue. How exotic can you get in Laguna Beach? And I would urge those who are interested in attending to give Alan Bursteed a telephone call. We don't want hundreds of people to suddenly show up at the door. Alan's telephone number is area code 714, for those in Southern California, 814-1050. Program begins at 7 o'clock. There's a lovely reception at 6:30 prior. So let's just talk about Roger. As I mentioned, some of these incredible quotes about your playing. Audible Chocolate. Costa Rica News. A wonderful Washington Post quote that I think I mentioned: voraciously hungry mind, and that tells me a lot about you, because we're not talking simple music, we're talking very profound, very deep music. So can I just ask, it's always an interesting question for people who are watching these kind of interviews, for me and for others, but at what time do you have any memory when it just clicked in your head that at some point in your youth or whatever, maybe when you were studying in college or high school, that you said, I like this idea, I'm going to become a concert pianist? It's not easy. Go ahead, tell me about that.
Okay, well, my mother reminds me that, I suppose you know that I started when I was 12, and some people say that that's quite late. My mother reminds me that I had asked to start lessons earlier than that, maybe even when I was 8 or so, but she didn't want to drag me to lessons and nag me to practice. Her mother had done hers, so waited longer, and finally my choir teacher in junior high approached my mother and said, "This boy really needs lessons." And so my lessons started at the end of my 6th grade. I was 12. And I suppose by the beginning of 7th grade, or certainly a year after that, I was already thinking, I know there's something that I want to do here long term. And my choir teacher was my first piano teacher, Carol Berwick, but after a year she said I should move on to an artist teacher, master, John Weems. And by the time I got to be with John Weems, I knew I wanted to be a concert pianist. I didn't realize how silly an idea that was. But that's one of the world's greatest things. I'll do that, and I still think it is. And that teacher, John Weems, led me far. You asked about where my sound came from. I'm not sure if it's from him, but much of my ideas came from John or were fomented by John Weems. Then that takes me through high school, and now I know I want to major in music, and I even go to the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Houston. I grew up in Houston. And so after that, I major in music in college and have more teachers, and then get out on the road and see what I can make happen. I don't know if I answered your question. I actually can't remember what it was now. So.
Oh, you did a marvelous job. And the other thing is, as you said, getting out on the road. Let's just agree that a career in classical music is hard. Very, very difficult, very complicated, very, very tough. So, I admire all of us. I made the same decision. It's hard. It's a hard career. But, when we're smitten, as you have just described, that's just all there is to it. Music is our life, and we proceed. No
You're right about being smitten with piano music. Totally am. And you're right, classical music is very hard. Everybody always told me it's going to be so hard to make money in classical music. And it's true. In my 20s, out of college, boy, I mean, it was really tough. I didn't make money. But I think most people don't, right?
I think so.
I think the really hard thing about being in classical music that nobody tells you is how much you're going to get your feelings hurt. Because I'll tell you, it happens almost every day. Something comes along, like emotionally invested in what you do, what you teach, and people come along and say something, and they want to make you feel good, and actually it doesn't do that. And sometimes they're supposed to be joyous about it. I shouldn't complain, but when people talk about classical music is so hard, what I think about is how competitive it is. Picky people are, and how subjective it is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Alan Bursteed, your colleague, my colleague, and his series, Soiree series. When do you remember when you met Alan? Yeah.
Okay, that is a little hard for me, and Alan and I put it differently. Well, I would rather go with his answer. He says that, uh, well, I need to tell you more. I played the last 10 years for this wonderful church called St. James Presbyterian in Tarzana, which has a enormous appreciation of music, and it's the reason I go there. And Alan was brought in to play with us, I guess, on our Christmas program or on one of our programs. And that is how he says, so when I've met him away from the church, and I thought that some of those were before we met at St. James. So we certainly played together in small and large gigs together. I'm thinking of a small one where I accepted playing at a mall in Thousand Oaks. And Alan said, "Hey, do you want to? Why don't I come and I come and play with you?" And I said, "Okay, sure, that would be supportive." And he did, and we had a great time actually. And I guess that's not the first time we met. How could it be? But that's for some reason the one that goes first.
Hey, by the way, that's a great service to community, playing classical music in a mall.
Yes. Now, I may have been playing light classical.
That's okay.
Yeah, it was. I didn't want to present anything too dark and dreary for all the jewelry shoppers and everything, but it was a fun gig, strange one. I've never had one like it, playing in the mall.
It's a wonder that the Muzak didn't drown you out. So at some point, presumably, they got rid of the Muzak, or you played over it.
I remember they would turn the music back on during our breaks.
Yeah, enough of this irritating classical music. Let's get the junk music back so that people will be happy. Yeah. Anyway, you did a great service.
I encounter this quite a bit. Enough of this classical music stuff. Let's get to let's turn on the pop station or something. I do what I can to help spread the joy of classical music because it's so deep, and I just love where it takes me. And
that's what Alan has said. He's very, very impressed with your playing, the level of your playing, and I've used the quote from the Washington Post earlier. Let's have a look at this program for a little bit because we're not talking easy stuff. Chopin Sonata Number 3. Tell me a little bit about that so people will understand.
Well, okay. The Chopin wrote 3 sonatas, so I picked this one because it's the newest. No, it's my first time on the B Minor Sonata. When I was younger, I played the B flat minor quite a bit, all over the world. Everywhere I went, I played the B flat minor Sonata, loving it. And then here in my 40s, I've decided to be practicing the B minor, and it's such a great piece, and I think larger in scale than the B flat minor, more mature. And actually, I love our program because the works we're playing are quite rarely heard. The B minor sonata, just because of its length, you wouldn't hear it all the time, though it's not super rare in the high echelons of piano concerts and competitions. But then this sonata, this Beethoven sonata in G major, the violin sonata that we're playing, I've never heard it programmed. I know, of course, it's programmed, but I've never.
It's very, very difficult. Let's talk about that number 10, the number 10 violin sonata of Beethoven's The Last. 1812 is roughly the year of composition. We're talking about the beginning of basically the First World War of the 19th century, really. The Napoleonic Wars were devastating to mankind all over the world, really. South America as well. So Beethoven was not unaware of politics around him, as we know. It's a tremendous work. But let me just speak a little bit. You play the number 3 Chopin. Then after a little break, there's the Tarantella. What a lovely thing to do.
This is a great piece, a very short piece and very upbeat. Obviously, it's a Tarantella. It's in 6/8 time, so it's just bouncing all over the place all the time. And also, I think, not commonly heard piece, and also my first time on it. So, trying out a bunch of new pieces this weekend.
I was going to say that so far you're describing a program that is kind of fresh to you as well.
Yes, it's the Prokofiev, however.
Let's talk about that. I mentioned earlier Prokofiev. The chamber music of Prokofiev was the very first chamber music I started to listen to when I was a kid in junior high. We're talking a million years ago. And I remember this last movement, Precipitato, very, very well, of the number 7 Piano Sonata. Tell me about that. It's in 7/8. It whizzes by. How tough is it?
Oh, it's very tough. You have to know where to put your fingers, for sure. I mean, it jumps all around, though the real difficulties begin on the last 2 pages. Though the whole thing is hard, it's fast. But in the last 2 pages, you're moving constantly all over the keyboard, changing registers and trying not to miss.
How true. That's the story of our lives, trying not to miss.
Yeah.
Now,
Sure.
Can I take a few moments? I'd like to talk. You founded the music school at Foothill in Arcadia a few years ago. Give me a little story about how that began. What you're up to there at the music school.
Well, it was started by my wife, Mary Lowe, and myself. We had many private students that we were teaching in different locations, and we decided to bring it all together from our own music school, where we also reach out to the community. We offer violin lessons and just lessons in whatever instrument approach. Viola, drum. We have a drum set. We have flute lessons and guitar lessons, and in the past we even had rare instrument lessons like escape.
No problem. Bottom line is you are serving the community, are you not?
Yes. I mean,
and you're also influencing young students, young kids, and it's very, very important, as you very well know. If we don't have young kids that are given some kind of training, that have some kind of interest in music, and we know how important music is, although a lot of people say it's worthless, it isn't. It's very important for the mind. Talk to me a little bit about that. There has to be something that really drives you to have this school, to teach these kids, to offer these kind of lessons, so on.
Well, okay, the whole journey of learning an instrument is akin to puzzles, solving problems, puzzles. It may be hard to imagine why that is, but the physical nature of putting together pieces, what fingering. For me, I like the puzzle solving of it, and of course, that also leads to how to make the music so beautiful. And I don't want to sound like a puzzle freak because that's not what I mean. It's the beauty of the music is paramount, but in order to reproduce it in a way that is beautiful requires knowledge and puzzles.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
And you know as I do that composers very deliberately create puzzles.
Well, they do. They might even create difficulties. I mean, just going from one note to another could be called a puzzle, and then a puzzle could be called a difficulty. But what I'm talking about is like composers who go out of their way to make the pianist on display, right? Composers like Balakirev writing Islami, or Prokofiev writing his sonatas. They're just chock full of notes and so much to do, and so you have to have much stamina and strength to play through and solve the puzzle in that way.
Yes. To say nothing of the intellectual puzzle, you've been praised for your understanding of the intellectual puzzle. To me, it's always about subtext.
Yes.
So, very, very wonderful program coming up. Let me run down the details quickly, and then I think we'll be done. This Sunday, December 3rd, 7 p.m., there's a reception at 6:30. Alan Bursteed's Soiree, Musical Soiree series. The address, it's a home concert, is 1565 Tahiti Avenue in Laguna Beach, and you need to, it would be a good idea to give Alan a call. Let me give the phone number once again. Area code 714 for all of you in Southern California, 814-1050, just to make sure that we don't have too many people showing up. That would be delightful. Apparently at the last concert there were about 75 that arrived, and the capacity is about 125, so we're very close to having a tremendous success. Roger, it's been a great pleasure chatting with you. Also, just the honesty of our conversation has been marvelous, so that people understand that it's a hard path that we choose. There are lots of difficulties, but the joy of making music compensates, in my view, and I think in yours, for all of it, all of the difficulties. Roger Wright, pianist, many thanks for giving me this time. Thank you.